Why me? When it's all said and done, however, one objection to affirmative action is answerable on its own terms, and that is the objection of the individual who says, why me? Sure, discrimination has persisted for many years, and I acknowledge that the damage done has not been renovated by changes in the law. But why me? I didn't own slaves. I didn't vote to keep people on the back of the bus. I didn't turn water hoses on civil rights marches. Why then should I be the one who doesn't get the job, or who doesn't get the scholarship, or who gets bumped to the back of the waiting list? I sympathise with this feeling, if only because in a small way I have had the experience that produces it. I was recently nominated for an administrative post at a large university. Early signs were encouraging, but after an interval, I received an official notice that I would not be included in the next level of consideration. And subsequently, I was told unofficially that at some point a decision had been made to look only in the direction of women and minorities. Although I was disappointed, I did not conclude that the situation was unfair because the policy was obviously not directed at me. At no point in the proceedings did someone say, let's find a way to rule out Stanley Fish. Nor was it directed, even at persons of my race and sex. The policy was not intended to disenfranchise white males. Rather, the policy was driven by other considerations, and it was only as a byproduct of these considerations, not as the main goal, that white males like me were rejected. Given that the institution in question has a high percentage of minority students, a very low percentage of minority faculty, and an even lower percentage of minority administrators, it made perfect sense to focus on women and minority candidates, and within that sense, not as the result of prejudice, my whiteness and maleness became disqualifications. I can hear the objection in advance. What's the difference? Unfair is unfair. You didn't get the job. You didn't even get on the shortlist. The difference is not in the outcome, but in the ways of thinking that led up to the outcome. It is the difference between an unfairness that befalls one as the unintended effect of a policy rationally conceived, and the unfairness that is pursued as an end in itself. It is the difference between the awful unfairness of Nazi extermination camps and the unfairness to Palestinian Arabs that arose from, but was not the chief purpose of, the founding of a Jewish state. The new bigotry. The point is not a difficult one, but it is difficult to see when the unfairness scenarios are presented as simple contrasts between two decontextualized persons who emerge from nowhere to contend for a job or a place in a freshman class. Here is student A. He has a board score of 1,300, and student B, who has a board score of only 1,200. Yet she is admitted and A is rejected. Is that fair? Given the minimal information provided, the answer is of course no. But if we expand our horizons and consider fairness in relation to the cultural and institutional histories that have been brought, the two students to this point, histories that weigh on them, even if they are not the history's authors, then both the question and the answer suddenly grow more complicated. The sleight of hand logic that first abstracts events from history and then assesses them from behind a veil of willed ignorance gains some of its plausibility from another key word in the anti-affirmative action lexicon. The word is individual. As in, the American way is to focus on the rights of the individual rather than the groups. Now, the individual and individualism have been honourable words in the American political vocabulary, and they have often been well employed in the fight against various tyrannies. But like any other word or concept, individualism can be perverted to serve ends the opposite of those it originally served. And this is what has happened when, in the name of individual rights, millions of individuals are enjoined from redressing historically documented wrongs. How is this managed? Largely in the same way that the invocation of fairness is used to legitimize an institutionalized inequality. First, one says, in the most solemn of tones, that the protection of individual rights is the chief obligation of society. Then one defines individuals as souls sent into the world with equal entitlements, as guaranteed either by their creator or by the Constitution. Then one pretends that nothing has to happen to them since they stepped onto the world stage. And then one says of these carefully dentured souls that they will all be treated in the same way, irrespective of any of the differences that history has produced. Bizarre as it may seem, individualism in this argument turns out to mean that everyone is, or should be, the same. This dismissal of individual difference in the name of the individual would be funny were its consequences not so serious. It is the mechanism by which imbalances and inequities suffered by millions of people, through no fault of their own, can be sanitized and even celebrated as the natural workings of unfettered democracy. In conclusion, individualism, fairness, merit. These three words are continually misappropriated by bigots who have learned that they need not put a white hood or bar access to the ballot box in order to secure their ends. Rather, they need only clothe themselves in a vocabulary plucked from its historical context and made into the justification for attitudes and policies they would not acknowledge if frankly named.